In this new tiny apartment episode, we're going to make a ceiling panel with cloud-shaped lights for the bathroom. It lightens up the space very effectively and looks really beautiful. So let's check it out. Boom! I started by working on the wooden panel. I'm making this project for the bathroom and all the wood in there is oak. I didn't have oak boards big enough for this project and it would be very difficult to gather new materials due to the coronavirus situation. But since I had oak veneer left over from other projects, I covered one face of the plywood with oak veneer and left the other face with the existing finish. I then cut the plywood into strips to match the look I was looking for and cut them to length so that the panel ended up with 65 by 130 centimeters. The fact that this is plywood and not solid wood actually came as an advantage because oak tends to move a lot with humidity and plywood is a much more stable material. To make the upper structure, I used the lightest wood I had on hand, which in this case was Nordic pine. So I cut a few pieces to create sort of a frame. Before putting the panel together, I finished the strip edges with some water-resistant varnish meant for bathroom and kitchen countertops. It would be impossible to do so after the panel is put together. To create equal spacings, I used a stack of business cards, but you can use anything else like playing cards or a few pieces of cardstock. I pin-nailed everything with super thin nails and it worked really nicely as you don't even see the nail holes when looking up to the final object. I can now sand the whole face and leave it in the sun to achieve a nicer, warmer color. I brought the panels out during 3 afternoons to achieve a deeper tone. This might work differently depending on the wood species, but this oak gets a warmer golden color that I dig a lot more than the initial pale tone that is shown on this leftover piece. Also, it's a natural way of slightly enhancing the wood tones, and I find it pretty cool. I can now finish the entire board with the same water-based varnish I applied to the edges. While it is drying, I can start showing you how I made the clouds. So I drew them on Fusion 360, which was not easy for someone that never uses this kind of softwares, but eventually I was able to get 2 different clouds. I sent the drawings to my Inkspire resin printer that Zortrax sent me to try out. Here's a little unboxing moment that I recorded a few months back when I got the machine. I can say I was really impressed with the packaging. All materials feel high quality, so the first impressions were great. Everything feels well built and packed with care. The instructions are also great and Zortrax has a bunch of videos on their channel explaining how to set up your machine, calibrating and replacing parts. The printer feels very robust and premium with a nice weight and choice of materials. It also comes with a starter kit filled with tools and accessories to get you started. So before starting to print, it's always a good idea to calibrate the plate and make sure that it is flush against the bottom of the tank. This is a resin printer, so it means that instead of using plastic filament, you'll be using liquid photopolymer resin. The bottom of the tank has an LCD screen that flashes UV light in each layer, forcing the resin to solidify, conforming to the layer shape. You can find all this information on their website and channel, and I've placed a link below in case you're interested. So now let's go ahead and actually print a cloud. It took 9 hours and 38 minutes to print, and I tried to make a full time lapse of the print, but the camera ran out of battery a few times during the shoot. So this is why you see some jumps on the image, but the print itself turned out amazing and super smooth. I will rotate the machine just so you can see how it looks like all around. These auto-generated support pieces are necessary to make sure the shape doesn't collapse during the printing time. I can now unscrew the plate and bring everything to the ultrasonic cleaner. This liquid is isopropyl alcohol that is used to clean the remaining resin. This shape is too big to fit inside the tank, so I carefully separated the piece from the plate and went ahead cleaning it a bit better. It's also a good idea to clean the plate right away and reattach it to the printer. These supports come in very interesting shapes actually. They seem like parts of cranes or something like that. We will need to do a little bit of cleanup later on. Since I don't have a UV light chamber, I place my pieces in the sun for a while to fully cure them. Now I can start working on the light for the clouds while the rest of the clouds are printing. I was making the support plates out of plastic but realized that the material gets curved with the heat from the LEDs, so I changed plans and cut all 5 plates out of thin aluminum sheet. I have 2 shapes that are similar and smaller, and 3 other plates slightly bigger. So initially I simply separated the shapes on the bandsaw, and then I went ahead taping them together so I can cut the similar plates all at once. I ran out of double-sided tape, which would be much preferable here, so I got away with the masking tape and CA glue trick. I only have this bandsaw blade and it is pretty wide for this type of cut, so I had to make a bunch of relief cuts in order to achieve the final shapes. Let's get into soldering the tiny pieces of LED strip and match the cloud shape as best as we can. It wasn't that easy to cover the entire plate surface because I could only cut the strips every 31mm on the designated areas. That little scissors icon is where you can cut the strip, otherwise you will mess it up. Since I was using silicone cover strip meant for humid areas, in order to get everything connected, I had to scrape off the silicone as well as the varnish that covers the copper soldering spots. I cleaned the copper connectors with isopropyl alcohol to remove any remaining residue and put a drop of tin solder over each connection point. I got these cheap T-Rex looking pliers that I used for the first time on this project and was amazed at how quickly it worked out at stripping the wires. I've always individually stripped wires with a small knife and this is so much faster. I'll leave the link below along with some of the materials and tools used in this project. I was using what I had, and although this was not ideal in terms of color coding, the wiring worked fine. I had an old exhaust fan switch with many color wires that were the perfect diameter for this job and decided to create a color code for myself. All vibrant colors would be positive and neutral colors would connect into negative spots. So in this case, blue is positive and white is negative. Off camera, I did apply a little bit of neutral silicone to the wiring ends to seal everything up and prevent moisture from damaging the circuits. The clouds needed a bit of cleanup on the side that was supported on the printing plates, so I sanded off the protruding parts and removed the little dotted areas. Because my 3D software skills are not good at all, I wasn't able to make the bottom lip with the shape that I wanted and ended up with a bunch of sharp corners that I got rid at this point. The purpose of this lip is to be able to add some magnets that will keep the cloud in place when the panel is upside down on the ceiling. This way the clouds can easily be removed and set in place during the lamp installation and eventual future problems. Now I need to embed matching magnets on the wood panel, and for that I use an extremely basic trick. I just painted the magnets with acrylic paint and pressed the cloud over the wood. Please note that you cannot use a fast-drying marker like, for example, a Sharpie, because the paint will dry off before you even have time to turn the cloud over. I use super glue to make sure they don't come off in the future, and it's a good idea to recheck if the correct pole of the magnet is facing up before you press them into place. I have made this mistake in past projects, and it's a bummer to realize you had two positive or negative sides facing each other when it's all glued and ready. I can now find some spots on the aluminum to drive a couple of screws. Here I was soldering the connection wires between the clouds to build a full circuit. I know the wiring seems all black and the same in camera, but one of the wires had marks that I consider to be positive wire, but you can't really see in the video. Again, I was using just materials that I had and repurposed. Did my best to insert the wires through the wood gaps without disturbing the cloud placement and connected everything on the other side. Since I have 2 points of light in the ceiling, I decided to add a secondary LED strip to light up the perimeter of the panel that will get a different transformer and be connected to another wall switch. So I can turn on the clouds separately from the perimeter strip or having both on at the same time. Alright, all is working. Now what's left to do is to screw a couple of hooks on the wood and install it in the bathroom. I didn't have a better hanging idea from the hardware that I had, so I just drove 2 hooks to the concrete ceiling and the other 2 to the lamp. It is finally done and installed, and I'm super happy about the way this turned out. This is quite difficult to film and photograph because not only the lights are super bright and harsh on the camera lens, but also there's not much available space to move the camera around since the bathroom is so small. There's no way I can show you the results seen from the human eye, but I can tell it looks super cool. Anyway, let me know what you think about this project in the comments below, and I hope this inspires you to get your hands dirty. A big shout out to all my Patreon supporters who made this video possible. Stay tuned for the next tiny apartment episode that I'm sure you're gonna love. Thanks for watching everyone, and stay safe. Até já!